How's everybody feeling tonight? Feeling good? Woo! All right, everybody have their drinks in hand, ready to go, ready to learn? We're here to learn. Real quick question, does anybody have one of those little tiny crappy Mac remotes, you know, the little ones that you can click a button and it goes to the next one? Okay, I take that as a resounding no.
Oh, the thing I just clicked through?
Yeah. All right, well, then I guess I'm going to have to stand right here. Normally I like to walk around, but that's okay. Nah, that's okay. Thanks, so. All right, introducing Bill Swearingen. Woo! Hi, I'm Bill. Yay! I'm sorry you've had to hear from me so much tonight. You know, our normal MC is not available tonight, and so you had to listen to me all night. But congratulations, you get to listen to me a little bit more. So tonight I'm going to talk about root certificates and why we should just go ahead and trust everyone. And really, what I'm going to be going into is how SSL and TLS really kind of works. You know, just kind of a real basic explanation of how SSL works, just so we can get a good basis. And then a little bit about, you know, an introduction to our 300 most trusted advisors, our root certificates that we have currently installed. Before I get started, then, oh no. Well, tough, I guess. But first, before we get started, I got to talk a little bit about encryption. And I know that this is probably one of the most exciting slides that you've ever seen, but really I kind of wanted to describe the difference between symmetric and asymmetric encryption first. So first of all, they're just FYI, there's a couple different types of encryption. The first is symmetric, and this is really what you think about when you think about a password, right? So if the same password encrypts a piece of text that's needed to decrypt the text, that's called symmetric encryption. Generally speaking, symmetric encryption is very, very fast, okay? It's very easy for a system to encrypt and to decrypt a message block. Sometimes you guys may think about, you know, an XOR example where if the passphrase was setkc, we take a message block, we XOR it against setkc. In order to get returned back, we just use the same key as setkc, and we can decrypt the text. Along with that is asymmetric encryption. And really, that's our public-private key pairs, all right? So a lot of you, if you think about PGP, the way PGP works is that I have a private key that I keep, and I publish a public key, right? And you can encrypt, and the public key is fine to give to everyone. If you want to encrypt a piece of text, you give them the public key. They do the same XOR XOR the message block, but you can't use the public key to decrypt it. You need the private key to do that, and vice versa, right? So if you were to encrypt something with your private key, you need the public key to decrypt it. So one thing that differentiates asymmetric encryption from symmetric encryption is that asymmetric also brings along the concept of authentication. Right? And so this is really important, right? So if we're talking about a symmetric key, anybody who has the key can both encrypt and decrypt our message block, right? So there's really no way to prove authentication across that. It's whoever has the password, right? If I were to tell someone the password and they were to tell someone the password, there's no way that I can prove that it originated from a certain person. Asymmetric is very different, right? Because I have a private key that I keep private to myself, if you can decrypt something with my public key, then it is expected that, number one, not only did it provide privacy, it also provided authentication because you can prove that it came from my private key. So let's talk about SSL. Who in here knows 100% how SSL works? One? Okay, so I have one person actually listening. You, sir, get a butt. All right, let's try that again. How many people in here know how SSL works? And it's okay, I'm going to say SSL, TLS, whatever.
90%. He said 100%.
Yeah.
So
the comment I heard was that I need to type in HTTPS. Right? Well played. Okay, well here I'm going to explain how SSL TLS works for dummies. Okay, I'm not going to spend all my 15 minutes talking to you about SSL, but essentially when I go to a website, and we are going to be talking about web specific, right? But when I type HTTPS, I want to tell you what my computer does. First of all, my computer compiles a bunch of data about itself. It says, hey, here are the different versions of SSL or TLS that I know about, right? It says, here are the list of cipher suites that I know about in order that I would prefer to use from strongest to weakest, okay? It also conveys, here's the type of compression methods that I know about. Then it adds a 32-bit random number, and then it creates a session ID field, and then it sends the request to the web server. I want to call out right now, this communication is in clear text. Okay? And I'm just saying hello. Hey, let's set something up. The server receives that information, and it generates a session ID number. Remember, my client had passed it a field of a session ID field, right? The server responds back with a session ID. The server decides, hey, I saw that list of SSL or TLS. I took a look at that. Here's what I know about. We're going to agree on this one. It also does the same thing for compression. Hey, I took a list of everything you sent. Here's what we're going to agree on. It took a look at the cipher suite. That's very important. And it says, here's what we're going to agree on. It's very important to call out the cipher suite because there's been a lot of attacks. In fact, Alex back at Barley showed an attack, the Beast attack, where he was able to middle traffic going to Facebook because they were utilizing a weak cipher suite, right? So even though my client is configured to use strong authentication, strong cipher suites, the server can say, yeah, that's great, but I want to use whatever, RC4, something like that. And then takes that 32 byte that the client said, and it modifies it a little bit. It really what we're trying to do is just make sure that our sessions are correct. It modifies it, it adds a timestamp, a date stamp, those kind of things. It really doesn't matter. But then what's really important here, and this is really the point of the talk, is it attaches its public key certificate, right? And it says, hey, I see that you want to set up an encrypted tunnel with me. Why don't we talk with asymmetric encryption? Here's my public key, pal. Right. So my computer receives that public key. All right? And my computer says, yeah, let's check out this public key. Let's take a look at it. Number one, is this public key, has it expired? Is the date that's on it, is it legit? Right? Okay, great. The time frame that the certificate should live is good. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. This certificate was signed by, I don't know, VeriSign. Who's VeriSign, right? So your computer goes back to its trusted root store and says, hey, I'm looking through my chain of trust. Do I see VeriSign as somebody that I trust? Yep, VeriSign, there you are. All right, I agree that Google.com, this is the right Google.com, it's signed by somebody I trust. Let's go ahead and send an encrypted message back to them that contains a symmetric key, right? Okay, let's go back and think about that. Right away, I kind of explained encryption a little bit. And I explained that the difference between symmetric and asymmetric was that symmetric encryption, remember that key, right? So if I know the password is setkc,
we have a long tradition here at SetKC, so if you're speaking too technically, we'll give you a shot of Jaeger.
Are you serious? This is SSL for dummies. You guys should have seen the slides before I reduced them. Oh great, that was Jaeger. I'm gonna fight. Trent knows I have. Trent knows. Yeah, come at me, bro. Trent knows I have one weakness, and it's Jaeger. All right, well, we're gonna fight. All right, well, I guess I'll bring it a little bit more high level for you manager types. Okay, so now we're encrypted. All right, I do want to go back. So I want to call out how clever the people were that designed the way SSL and TLS worked. Okay, so we needed to have a way for number one, we were compute restrained, right? So when SSL was first designed by Netscape, they recognized that our web servers were restrained by processors. So we needed to use the fastest encryption that we could, and that fastest encryption was a symmetric key, a pre-shared key. The password is setkc, right? But how do I share that password with a client, assuming that everybody in the world is watching, right? Oh, I got a great idea. We'll use asymmetric encryption to encrypt the password, send it back to the server, and now we've agreed on the password. That is very clever. Everyone cheer for Netscape. Woo! All right, thank you, Netscape. Thank you very much. All right, so now that we have shared our symmetric key, now we can move over to the symmetric key encryption, and then our comms are securely shared using our symmetric key that we shared over asymmetric encryption. Okay, so I want to rewind a little bit, all right? Up here in the red box, and thank God it was red. That was actually, I was worried. Red is very hard for projectors. Right up front, remember initially when our client said, "Hello, server, here's everything I know about," and then our client's sitting there waiting, and we get a message back from the server. This is all done in clear text. Okay, this is an opportunity for an attacker to middle themselves inside of our communications, right? This is the weak spot of our communication, because at this spot, not only can an attacker change our session ID, can they change the version of SSL that we're agreeing on, all this stuff, but most importantly, they can change the certificate that comes back to our client. Some of you may have seen this before. Have you guys ever been in Burp and you wanted to start to middle SSL traffic, and you say, yes, I want to middle this traffic, and as soon as you do that, boom, your clients get a site certificate. It's not trusted, right? We've all seen that. Boo. Right? But we've seen this before. Let me explain what's happening, okay? So you are middling that traffic, and it's coming back to your computer, and it's saying, I am going to create a certificate for google.com. FYI, you can tell that this has been photoshopped by the pixels. But it's saying, here is a public key for google.com that has been signed by 10.0.0.1, right? So your computer says, hey, is 10.0.0.1 in my trusted store? Uh-oh, it's not. Let's throw up a site security certificate, not trusted sign, right? Is everybody with me so far? Let's hear a yes! Yes! All right. Yeah. All right, so let's think about this for a second, okay? The only thing our computers care about is two things. They care about, first of all, the lighting. They care about, number one, is that certificate still valid? Is the date range valid? If the answer is yes, then it goes to, do I trust the signing provider of that? If the answer is yes, you do not get that site certificate error message. So let's think about that. If google.com is legitimately signed by DigiTrust, and I don't know if it is or not, okay? And your computer has a trust with a root certificate with DigiCert, then when you go to google.com and they present your certificate, hey, you passed. What if you are presented with a Google certificate that was signed by VeriSign? Guess what? Your computer doesn't know any difference. It says, is the certificate valid? Is it a trusted root certificate I have? Yes, and it'll pass. Okay, but wait. So that would never happen, right? I'm not going to go through these, but this is a list in just the last 3 years of root certificate authorities that have generated false certificates. I want to call out the very first one that you can't read, but I can. The CNNIC, which is the Chinese InterNIC, okay? It is a government-run agency that just accidentally issued a star.google.com certificate. Oops. Right? DigiNotar, who heard about that? DigiNotar was compromised, and the attacker the attacker generated over 530 fake certificates, right? Every one of your computers, every one of your phones, every one of your computing devices trusted DigiNotar, and the attacker generated a fake certificate that you would have no idea, your computer would have no idea was false. All right, so here's where it's going to turn into a little bit of scariness. OS X, OS 10, sorry, Mac people, ships with 203 pre-installed root certificates. 203. So do you guys know one thing that's pretty interesting about having a root certificate? Is if I am an owner of a root certificate, I can give out the authority for another person to issue certificates. Remember, we're talking about a certificate chain of trust. That person that receives the ability to generate certificates, they can give it out to somebody, right? So I know that we have some law enforcement people in the house tonight. I've already said hi, and I'm not asserting anything. But if I were a law enforcement person and I wanted to middle some traffic, I have three capabilities, right? Number one, get a root certificate installed on all of the computers everywhere. Given that OS 10 ships with 203, I've probably got a good shot. Number two, I could force one of these root certificates that we trust to generate a cert that would be google.com or whatever that I'm trying to middle, right? Or number three, I could make a fake company and have it installed as a root certificate, or even further down the line as part of the chain of trust to generate a root certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot trust your root certificate store. The one that I have highlighted is a root certificate that was installed on both my Mac, my phone, and every one of your devices. And it is labeled Government Root Certificate Authority. As I looked into it, do you know who owns that?
We have a tradition here at CKC. If you say cyber in a talk, we do a show. What's that?
Have I said cyber?
You just did, pal.
Wow. So those who know me well know that I like cleverness, and that was very clever. Well played. Cyber.
Another shot.
As I looked into this government root certification authority was owned by the Taiwanese government. Hey, I'm probably, you know what, as an American citizen, I probably visit Taiwanese government web pages daily, right? There is absolutely the reason that I should have that installed. Okay? Android ships with 162 pre-installed root certificates. One of those being CNNIC. Oops, I issued a fake Google certificate. iOS. How many iOS users do we have in the house? Bring out those iPhones, hold them in pride. Hold them in pride, because Apple's iOS ships with 224 system certificates that you can't even look at. There is no interface to iOS to even look at what certificates they ship with. You have to go to Apple's website and ask, hey, what root certificates do you install? Okay, my favorite thing in the world right now is that Windows 7 and Windows 8 is the only operating system that gets it right. Let me say that again. Windows is the only system that gets it right. They ship with shit. They don't ship with anything. They ship with like 15 root certificate authorities, and when you request one, if you were to go to a Taiwanese government website that needs a Taiwanese government root authority, then Windows will give you that root certificate and prove in real time that site is the right site that you're trying to visit. It ships with nothing. Okay, let's talk about this real quick. here's what I'm going to ask all of you to do. When you go home tonight, the only thing I want you to remember is that regardless of your computing platform, there is no need for us to have 200 root certificates installed in our computers. In fact, what you should do is you should go through and remove everything that you know you're not going to use, or just even start first and remove everything. Move everything to an untrusted. And when you go to a website that you trust, or when you go to a website that gives you that warning, then you say, oh, did you know Tar? Yeah, I have reviewed. And then you can go back in and enable that. I'm going to show you in Android how you do that. Oh, I guess I'm going to do that in iOS first.
Is there an app for that?
No, there's not an app for that. All right, so in Android users say, yes, we finally have that one thing on iOS and we can be like, yeah, well, you can't untrust root certificates. To do that, you go to Settings, Security, Trusted Credential System. You get you can't see it. At the very bottom, there's a Disable button. When you click Disable, it says, okay, are you sure you want to disable that? And then yes. The great thing about this is you are not deleting the certificate, okay? It's not going to cause you any downstream problems. All it's doing is disabling it. If you were to go to a website that needed it, it would give you that, hey, are you sure you really want to visit this website? In OS 10, you can open Keychain, then open the certificate, then you expand Trust, which is this window over here, right? So you can't see it, whatever. But when using this computer, or this certificate, never trust. All right, Windows users. Remember, Windows does it right. There's really not a whole lot that you need to do with Windows because there's not very many pre-installed. But if you want to see the certificates that you do have installed, you can remove them. Then simply go to Start and then type cert mgr.msc. iOS users, knowing's half the battle. There's really not a whole lot more that you can do from there. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bill Swearingen. You can see my website at incidentresponse.whatever. I hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.